Welcome to Thoughts and Bolts. Once again, this is the most parsimonious UFO theory. Maybe. One cut, one take, no editing. I'm your host, Pedro Laveria. And today, what I want to do is a thought experiment. I want to create the most parsimonious UFO theory because I think all UFO theories are wrong to some degree. So I'm not going to waste time trying to find out what's really going on. I'm trying to find out what might be going on. So look, William of Ockham, he was a monk and a philosopher in England. And he said, Entia non sunt multiplicanda praeter necessitatem, which means don't multiply entities unnecessarily. Or in other words, when trying to figure out the cause of an effect, you know, one cause is better than two, two is better than three, five is better than 10. Okay. Occam's razor does not mean choose the cause which is the least magical, most banal, most mundane, most boring, most materialist. Okay, that's not what it means. Okay, this guy was a monk. Okay, for him, the most parsimonious explanation to everything would have been God, right? But this is a good rule of thumb, right? If you can explain something with minimal assumptions, right? Try to explain something with the most few assumptions necessary, because you're less likely to be wrong. Okay, so that's going to be our guide to make sense of this. Okay, there are UFO theories galore. Okay. And this is just a very oversimplified map of the terrain. Okay. For each one of these UFO theories, there's multiple versions. Okay. UFO theories are like interpretations of quantum mechanics. Okay. Um, Everyone has one. Now, I want to find the most parsimonious UFO interpretation because that will make me less likely to be wrong. Okay, parsimony and truth are not the same, but Occam here gave us a great rule of thumb that we're going to use. So, to be parsimonious, I'm going to reduce myself to UFO theories that explain the UFO phenomenon with only one planet. Yes, planet Earth, which we know produces intelligent life, which we know produces in civilizations. Okay. We have multiple civilizations on this planet coexisting right now. There's no such thing as human civilization. Okay. There's the Semitic civilization, there's Islamic civilization, there's Eurasian civilization, there's Western civilization, you name it. Okay. So we're going to limit ourselves to one planet, planet Earth, and that'll get rid of these theories. Okay. The other thing I want to do is I want to limit myself to 3 dimensions plus time. Now, there may be 5 dimensions. There may be 10 dimensions. There may be a million dimensions. We don't know. But we do know for certain that there are at least 3 dimensions. We experience a 3 dimensional world. We can all agree on that. With time, the arrow of time going from present to future. Okay. Past, present to future. Now, I know there are backwards in times quantum effects. Okay. I'm not denying that. But I am saying we do know the arrow of time goes from the present to the future. And we do know that there are at least 3 dimensions that or at least we experience the world in 3 dimensions. So I want to limit myself to that. Okay. We don't know if time travel has ever occurred. I don't care. Yeah, I'm sure the math says it's possible. Yeah, it's possible. But give me one instance where we can prove time travel has occurred. We can't. We don't have it. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but we don't have it. So that's going to get rid of these. Okay. So that leaves us with this kind of crypto-terrestrial breakaway civilization family of theories called ultra-terrestrial theories for the UFO. Now, nuts and bolts versus parapsychology. or nuts and bolts versus consciousness, nuts and bolts versus woo. Okay. Nuts and bolts in ufology refers to the study of the physical craft, what they're made out of, how fast do they fly, what they look like, also what kind of biology the ufonauts may or may not have. Okay. And then the parapsychological aspect of the UFO phenomenon is regarding, telepathy, telekinesis, clairvoyance, um, visionary aspects of the UFO phenomenon. Okay, where the witnesses see visions in their mind of something else. People seeing really weird things. Okay, so there's that parapsychology aspect of the UFO phenomenon, which is often just called consciousness. And we divide the two. Why do we divide the two? Because we're modern people. Okay. Rene Descartes gave us this ontology, this two substance ontology of mind and matter. Okay. And this was just a useful fiction that was concocted in the early modern age because there was a time when scientists were persecuted by the church. So Rene Descartes said, hey, church, this is what's the deal. Okay. There is matter and there is mind. We scientists are only concerned with matter. Okay. We're going to study matter and matter, and only matter. You, the church, you are the master of the mind. Okay. You get to say what happens to the mind after the body dies. Where does it go? What happens to the soul when cheat on your wife, and what you need to do to make yourself better after that. That's your domain. Church, you're in charge of the mind. Us scientists, we're in charge of the matter, and we'll coexist. Okay. And that was the agreement that was made, and unfortunately, some of us still think this way. Now, that's where we get this nuts and bolts versus parapsychology divide in ufology. But if we're going to be parsimonious, we're going to do away with Cartesian dualism, and we're going to adopt thoughts and bolts study of the phenomena, a thoughts and bolts study of the craft and the ufonauts. Okay. Now, that would entail that we adopt some form of monism. Okay. Now, my preferred model is idealism. And I'll make a separate video on why that is. But, Descartes also said, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. The fact that we think, and well, the fact that we think, I mean, I'm thinking right now. That is the most stable datum we have in existence. Any one of us, the thing we are most sure about, the thing we can be most sure about is that we think. And in order to do something, you have to exist. So I think and I exist. That's the most stable data around. And what idealism says, and there's many flavors of idealism, what idealism says is that mind is not produced by matter, but rather that matter is an epiphenomenon of mind. uh, Physical stuff is something mind does, not my mind, not your mind, but mind as an ontological category. That mind comes before matter, and is generative of matter. In the idealist framework, matter is simply that which can be described exhaustively using mathematics. Okay, things you can talk about in terms of melting point and charge and spin and weight. Okay, that's what matter is, that which you can describe totally and completely using mathematics. And that's in the idealist frame of mind, the only difference between matter and, let's say, the taste of chocolate is that fact, right? That I cannot uh, describe the taste of chocolate using math, but that they are both essentially mental. Now, there's also neutral monism. And again, there are many flavors of neutral monism, but neutral monism posits a third substance, which is neither material or physical, but generates the two. There's also a form of neutral monism which says that, mind and matter are simply two aspects of the one substance, whatever that is. And then there's physicalism. Okay. Now, the thoughts and bolts framework also works if you're a physicalist, but it just requires more promissory notes, right? Because if mind is generated by matter, okay, if the only things that exist are the things we can describe exhaustively with numbers, right? If matter is the only thing that's real, okay, matter within space time, if that's those are the only things that are real, then that would mean my subjective experience in some sense is material. My subjective experience in some sense is physical. And what that would mean is that it is possible to describe the smell of a rose exhaustively with math, that there is some type of yet to be discovered mathematics that would allow us to completely describe what it feels like to be in love. Okay, that's a promissory note you got to make if you're a physicalist. But the aliens are either they're either neutral monists, they're either physicalists, or they're idealists, right? And in either case, they're monists. And so I want my UFO theory to have a thoughts and bolts um, explanation for the craft and associated phenomena. Okay. Now, this UFO theory, okay, remember one planet, 3 dimensions plus time, thoughts and bolts. It has to account for the different appearances of the UFOnauts. So the two most common, physical types reported by experiencers are the Nordic and the gray. And so in this framework, the Nords would be, if we're only using one planet, they would be humans. Okay? And the grays would be some kind of unknown bipedal terrestrial. Now, what kind of human? We can only speculate, right? Are these recent, companions to the Greys that have been adopted in some sense? Is this some lost tribe of Proto-Indo-European from 5,000 years ago that was, adopted by the Greys to do their dirty work? I mean, who knows, right? But if we're going to use the duck test, which is, if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, and walk like a duck, it's a duck, then we would have to say that the Nords are some kind of human being. They're humans, okay? And that the Greys are some kind of bipedal terrestrial, which we have yet to discover. I mean, this is possible, okay? It would explain why they breathe our air, for one. And again, a thoughts and bolts explanation for the craft, okay? There's some kind of technology which bridges the subject object gap, which which reveals the divide between mind and matter to be Descartes' fantasy. So now the Solarian hypothesis is interesting because it would explain maybe these bipedal terrestrials. Remember, we're not appealing to time travel here. Okay, we all experience the arrow of time going from past, present to future. Okay, again, that doesn't contradict quantum mechanics, but we do know for a fact that the arrow of time does go one direction almost always, right? And so I'm not going to appeal to time travelers at all. Okay. Now, the Solarian hypothesis is interesting because, the question remains if, God forbid, all human beings disappeared today, let's say some horrible thing happened and all humanity died in one day, how long would it take for our buildings, our cars, our computers, our toys, our airplanes, our satellites, our cell phones, everything to be reabsorbed into the earth? Well, if you read this paper, certainly within 1 million years, 2 million years, 3 million years, assuming all human beings died overnight, there would be no evidence whatsoever to suggest that our civilizations existed at all. The Earth would look like this virginal green planet as it once did before humans got technology. So that would be one possible explanation for the unknown bipedal terrestrial, right? Let's suppose that during the time of the dinosaurs, there was some advanced city building, spacefaring civilization. The asteroid destroyed it, and the survivors survived because they hid underground or were in the oceans or were off planet, and they've just stayed hidden ever since and let the crazy monkeys run havoc. The crazy monkeys being us. So that's the most parsimonious UFO theory possible. I'll put forward it's probably the least wrong. Um, I think that, it's also possible that the gray alien is extraterrestrial in origin. Let's say they came here a million years ago from another planet. And again, they just went down into the ocean, into the caves, maybe have a base or two on the moon, and have let us crazy monkeys have rule over the surface. Okay, that's a possibility. And of course, it's also a possibility that there are time traveling descendants. Okay, I'm not denying that possibility, but I think that assuming time travel means assuming time travel, right? We don't know if anyone's ever done that or will ever do that. But we do know that the Earth has produced multiple human civilizations, and so it's not impossible that maybe at some time in what we call the deep past, it's happened before, and they didn't survive for the most part, but that their descendants are among us. So that's the most parsimonious UFO theory. Again, I don't rule out the possibility that the Greys have an extraterrestrial origin, but if they came here a million years from now, from if they came here a million years ago, they certainly have gone native, so to speak, and could rightly be considered Earthlings just like us. So let me know what you think in the comments. I think this is a good place to start, and this is probably my leading theory. It could be wrong, right? You could have an interdimensional component to this, an interdimensional plus extraterrestrial component to this. I don't know, but this is the most parsimonious UFO theory. Maybe. Okay. Until then, remember your consciousness is not classified. See you at the top.